Fellowship of the Ring, Episode 2, Why We Love Wrestling.
You know, there's like, they don't use the word lifers in that many other fields. Like, I guess they do. Like, is there always a lifer?
Yeah.
As much as they do in wrestling?
Yeah.
Lifer is a term they use in wrestling, like, very, very... Like, they ask you straight up sometimes, like, are you a lifer? If you're, like, a pro wrestler. I've heard, like, things like that. Like, they ask you, like, are you a lifer? Or are you
have
just...
you been in it? Like, it's got to be, like, something to do with, like, a bit nepotism as well, where, like, your family's into it. It's
maybe.
It's in your blood.
Yeah.
You
Perhaps, like... I think even from a perspective of, like, a fan, like, you do feel, like, prejudiced towards... I don't personally, but I feel like there are people who feel, like, kind of prejudiced towards younger fans and, like, people who don't really, like... Don't respect the classics or something like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it's probably, like, one of the few topics where it's the biggest divide between, like, hard-out fans and then the casuals.
Like, a perfect example, which is, like, a dividing point, is AEW.
Yeah.
Right, because a lot of people can watch it and say, this is good, fun to pass the time, it's, like, an entertaining product, and, like, I can get behind this. And then there's a lot of people who say, this is just terrible, there's no good storytelling, no good, like, long-term booking, it's just spot fests, and, you know, that's the main criticism that it gets, and that they can't book people properly, and just, like, dumb shit, repetitive shit. Right, that's like one of the biggest examples. Some people like can't stand it, and some people think it's like all class.
Because at the end of the day, wrestling is kind of like music. Everyone has their own taste.
Full on.
Everyone has their own taste of what they want. Whether you want like heavy storytelling with theatrics like WWE, like say compare WWE to something like New Japan, which is really shown as a sport, where like they don't even try to put on like any theatrics at all. And that's their appeal to it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like performance based. It's like you do the work, and that'll speak volumes.
Yeah.
As opposed to WWE, where some people are still class in WWE. It's a big statement to say that they don't, but they've got a lot of class people. But yeah, it's a lot more bullshittery, if you can say.
Different selling points.
Yeah, like you guys have watched wrestling since you were kids, like always.
Yeah. Yeah. Since like since 2002, I guess. Would be approximate. Like that was like my first memory of wrestling. I'm not too sure whether it's something I made up in my mind or it was actually the first thing I saw. But it was the Triple H betrayal on Shawn Michaels. The pedigree. The
2002, 2003?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my first vivid memory of wrestling.
That's quite interesting. Do you remember what your first pay-per-view was that you bought or that you watched?
No, so I wouldn't have ever really... So the first pay-per-view after that I would have probably watched would have been more around 2006, 2007, borrowing a DVD from Blockbusters after I moved to Australia.
Nice.
Yeah.
Class.
So like before that it would have been just catching snippets of it on TV, and it was one of the few things that my parents let me watch in casually, just because it was an English-speaking product where they wanted me to improve my English by listening to English cartoons, English movies, English TV shows.
They were thinking, they're like, this is filth, but he's gonna learn English. That's interesting. Yeah. And when you said Blockbuster, I got a bit of a serotonin release as well. Because what a place. How about you, Mr. Burt?
Mr. Burt, my first vivid memory, I don't know. My first vivid memory, I've got to say, is definitely seeing Rey Mysterio get his leg fucking hacked by Chavo.
Ooh, shit,
That's the first vivid one. That was
06?
at least 06. But I was watching in like 04. Because I was definitely like watching it when Eddie Guerrero died. And then were very intensely into it when Chris Benoit killed himself.
Nice, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, so it's... Yeah, but still, that's the vivid memory. I reckon my first pay-per-view, it was at, we watched WrestleMania 21, I think.
The one where Cena won?
I think it is the one where Cena wins against JBL.
Is that 22 or 21? Fuck, it's one of them. It's one of them.
I'm not sure.
It's one of them.
I think that was the one where... I think it's like Jeff Hardy goes through a ladder or something.
That's 23. The one where Hardy goes onto the ladder, onto Edge and cracks. That was, I swear, that was the first ladder breaking moment in WWE when the ladder snapped.
Okay, so it would have been 23 then.
23. That's also the Battle of the Billionaires one where Trump and.
I think it was, yes.
Yeah,
I do remember. Yeah, that was one of the first ones.
That was one of my favorite pay-per-views as well. Honestly, that was a class one.
Yeah, so good.
And
I remember we just like we were wrestling out the front of this dude's house as well, and we were just like taking spears and like pile drivers into like the hedges, and we're almost getting our eyes taken out by like trimmed like branches and shit.
Very nice.
I remember there was just me and this other guy. You know him as well.
What's his name?
Pat Lou.
Oh yeah.
We were like fucking around, and we like roll towards the road just as a car pulls into the house to drop another kid off. It was just like, oh god, that mum would have been like absolutely traumatized. That was like the first thing. There's like some child almost getting his fucking head under the car wheel.
Fuck yeah! Shout out to Pat Lou.
Shout out to Pat Lou.
Shout out to his family.
Shout out to his family.
And who was your favorite wrestler?
My favorite wrestler was Edge.
Edge. And
He's a
who
mark, so
was your favorite wrestler?
Initially, I always supported Shawn Michaels because
Nice.
of that vivid memory of seeing someone being wronged. And then I'm like, oh no, this isn't right. And not knowing what was kayfabe and what was going on.
Nice. You got the sledgehammer in the back of all, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a brutal thing to watch as like a kid not knowing what was going on, just seeing two people who appeared initially to be friends just have a breakout brawl.
Nice. For me, it was interesting because my parents were very against like wrestling and stuff. For them, it was anything with like guns, anything with like fighting. Try and keep you away from it because I was born in Pakistan. I came to Australia when I was 3, right? So they were like, okay, the worst possible personality he can pick up is someone who's like violent or aggressive or anything like that. Just not to play into any like negative stereotypes. Right? So I was pretty much forbidden from watching wrestling for a very long time, and I swear I got my early lawyering skills from convincing my parents that this was something that I should be allowed to watch. And I reckon it was about 2003, 2002. Where I finally got my parents to be like, okay, we'll watch it with you, and if we think it's okay, we'll let it slide. And luckily it was my dad who'd watch it with me, and he did not mind at all. He thought it was fine. He'd sometimes look at me like, dude, do you really like this? Like, is there much worth watching? But at times he'd look at it and be like, wow, this is such good shit. You know what I mean? Sometimes he'd like it. But it was just one of the things in my childhood. Like, there were the kids in our school who had Foxtel or like cable TV, and they had access to it, and some people who didn't. I actually didn't, but I really wanted to find it somehow. Like, I remember back in the days, like using any link and back, like, you know, the torrents and these things back in the day, just to try and watch something. And yeah, it was something constant, and I watched wrestling pretty constantly until about 2010, 2011. And then that whole decade, I feel, was kind of, I only watched it here and there. I was pretty much sick of the product. And yeah.
Because just in general, like, accessibility of wrestling in Australia was a problem.
Yes, it was.
Like, especially, like, because I didn't have Foxtel or anything either. I've never had Foxtel or still in my entire life.
Same.
So, I still remember, like, the only times I actually watched wrestling was when I got those DVDs from Blockbuster. Or in my early years, I used to just go on the internet and literally type in Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah.
And I used to find these websites where, like, now that I think back, they were absolutely terrible. I'm not even too sure whether they were... No, they weren't quite that terrible. But, like, I remember just typing in something as simple as www.raw.com and trying to find website. Like, this is as a 8-9-year-old kid who couldn't figure out how to Google shit. Yeah. And like not find the actual website. I remember there was this one specific website for Raw where it had the list of all the superstars and like just a general bio. And that was all there was on this page. And I would spend like many hours and hours just reading about all the different wrestlers and their bios and their backstories. And it wasn't really even watching wrestling, it was just hearing about their stories.
That's class.
Yeah.
Because, okay, I swear I was getting wrestling stuff, like downloading wrestling stuff before I was downloading music. Yeah. Like, I honestly think I was, like, onto this before. I remember my first ever disc I got for WWE, like a DVD, was actually in 2006. It was the Royal Rumble. And after I got that, I was hooked. In that year, I would have probably bought maybe 10 wrestling DVDs. I got Survivor Series 2002 as the next one, and then I got fucking just heaps more, right? And then eventually, I'd just go to Blockbuster with my dad, rent like 2 or 3 for the week, and just binge out on them. And it was a crucial part, I think, of my growing up. Bro, watching wrestling, like, I swear, it gives you, like, also confidence and stuff. You watch people cut promos, you watch people, like, do their art and stuff. It gives you, like, you are inspired, like, to a large degree. My favourite wrestler was also Shawn Michaels, but I also like Jeff Hardy. Like, of course I did, but Jeff Hardy. I remember one of the first wrestlers I ever saw was Shannon Moore. One of the first matches, I remember very clearly, because one of the first times I ever saw wrestling was when I was in Australia by then, and I was at some random guy's house, and it was like some local community guy, and a few couple old boys were watching wrestling, and I was watching, and I saw this like punk looking guy, and I said, man, that guy looks cool. I want to be like that guy. That guy looks awesome. And that guy was fucking Shannon Moore, and I don't think I want to be anything like Shannon Moore, but also respect to Shannon Moore nonetheless. He might be awesome, but
Who the fuck is Shannon Moore?
Shannon Moore's this wrestler.
Ink guy.
The Incorporated guy from TNA.
Yes.
To be honest, right, the one thing which got me to stop watching wrestling, and I remember it very clearly, was something to do with TNA. Because I was watching TNA here and there, and there was an Aces and Eights angle, and it was interesting, it was really good, and they buried it in 1 week. It went from being really good to like really shit, and I said, okay, I think I'm like 15 or 14 now, I'm probably going to stop watching wrestling. And my parents were really proud of me. They're like, fucking well done. Like, good shit now. Do other stuff. Like, because I told them I wanted to be like a wrestling commentator and I wanted to do all this shit with wrestling, and they were like, fuck that. You are not doing anything like that. But no, they were cool about it, to be honest. They were like, follow your dreams. They weren't too tough, actually.
Weird, like, I don't really have, like, a concrete reason to why I stopped watching wrestling. I think a bit of it was that it was really, like, as a high school kid, it was uncool. It was the fact that it was it was almost frowned upon to like wrestling. It was like something that you got teased about.
I was just thinking that as well.
Yeah, and I guess like I didn't want to associate myself with that, and there was a period of time as a teenager where I did stop watching wrestling. But I did always kind of secretly go back to it every so often, every couple of years.
I think that's similar to me as well.
Yeah,
it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was. I understand where you come from saying it was uncool, but like in my school, right? Like,
yeah, but what sort of school did you go to?
I went to like
Who were the cool kids at your school?
the kids who got the best marks.
Yeah.
So like, if you got the best marks, you could like wrestling. You could like fucking My Little Pony, bro. No one would say shit to you. You could like literally anything, and you could convince people to like that. So people at my school are like the original entrepreneurs. Right? You do something, you convince someone else to follow a certain habit or something, and you can bullshit people. Like, I was really good in legal studies in high school, and so many people would ask me for a little bit of advice and how to do essays and stuff. I swear, I hate to say it now, but I would just say the randomest shit to them, just to like lead them down a tangent. Not to see them fail or anything, but just like, you've come to the wrong man for this quest. You know what I mean? Just very, very off tangent. Yeah, AEW was something that got me to watch wrestling again, and I know that sounds incredibly cringeworthy.
You fucking Mark.
But I didn't know about, when I watched wrestling, I didn't know about the Kenny Omegas, and I didn't know about the Young Bucks. I didn't know about like the Kazuchika Okadas, the Tanahashi 6ix9ines. I didn't know about any of these guys, right? I just knew like fucking John Cena, Randy Orton, and like people on the card, like Matt Hardy or whatever. I knew them, but I didn't know there was wrestling outside of TNA and WWE.
Wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know there was wrestling instead of just rustling.
Days of our Raw.
That's why when AEW came, I was like, okay, there is a move called the Canadian Destroyer. Okay, like this is fucking mental. Like, this is like something that I think looks sick. It looks mental. I was like, wow, fuck. Spanish Fly. Wow, I love seeing Spanish Fly. That's another move that I think looks mental. There were so many people who intrigued my interest when I watched AEW, and some of the storylines and some of the gimmicks that they had, the characters, were so simple but interesting. Like, in the first match I watched in AEW was Jurassic Express versus like these 3 Japanese guys who I don't think wrestle there anymore. And I saw these Jurassic Express cunts come out, and I was like, holy shit, like, that looks fucking weird. Like, there's one big-ass guy who looks like a fucking monster. Then there's, like, a normalish looking guy who looks a bit rugged. And then there's Marcus. Then there's, like, a fucking Hornswoggle next to him. Like, I was like, fucking hell, this is... I can get behind... It's like a fucking circus. And it has been a circus ever since then.
Yeah. It honestly has. I reckon, like, I can't remember the first time I stopped watching wrestling. I think it was probably that, like, high school. It was like, it's not cool to watch anymore. But definitely remember I was getting back in when it was, like, the Wyatt family. And it was just, like, watching fucking Bray Wyatt go along. And it's just like, ooh, this is talent without the look. Where he's got this different shit going on. And then you just see him, like, the whole crowd, like, lighten up their fucking phones. And it's like, oh, this is like, fairly decent. It's like, this is what it means to be over.
Another thing with me is a lot of my cousins in Pakistan loved wrestling. It was one way we could kind of bond. Was that similar with you?
No, to be honest with you, not really for me. But
Yeah, it's just like, and whenever I go there, a disc of wrestling. It's not even a disc of wrestling, it's a fucking DVD. A wrestling DVD would cost 100 rupees, which was $1, pretty much. Right, so you get like, you'd go overseas, you get like 20, 30 of them. You come back and you just have stuff to watch for the whole year. So it was like one of those things.
Yeah, how good.
Yeah, another very interesting one, okay? I'm hearing a lot of the youngins these days say this thing. They say, oi, he wants the smoke. He wants smoke. Yo, he wants smoke. And I knew this wasn't in reference to cigarette or vape or weed or anything. I knew this was a phrase. And this smoke thing means trouble. Okay?
Yeah.
He wants trouble. He wants a kind of attention trouble kind of, the radar kind of, right? That's what it means. Alright? Yeah. This is the same meaning of the wrestling term heat that people have been using in wrestling. The wrestlers and commentators of wrestling have been using for so long the term heat from ages back. And now little cunts are using this, but instead are saying smoke.
So you reckon it's cultural appropriation?
I reckon it's cultural appropriation of wrestling, and it's like, it's interesting in the sense that, okay, this kind of thing exists in popular culture. Because, okay, let's just make sure, no one was using the word, oh, he wants to smoke and this shit like 10 years ago, were they? Did you hear this often?
I don't even know what the fuck it means now. Like, honestly, if I heard someone say that, I'd just be like, what the fuck? Like,
he wants
leave me alone.
he wants trouble, right?
It's like, I'm playing Pokemon Go, just leave me alone. I'm trying to walk through here. They should never have built a train line here.
Fuck.
Oh, fuck's sake.
That's very good.
Well, where there's smoke, there's
Fuck,
fire.
fucking
And where
bit of a
there's
roll
fire,
tonight,
fire
though.
will start to burn.